The Academy of the Galactic Alliance was filled with silence when the word first spread. Students from dozens of alien worlds gathered inside the shining lecture hall, their wide eyes glowing with curiosity. They had come to learn the secrets of warfare, to study the art of victory. For centuries their people believed they feared nothing. They trained against the strongest beasts. They faced weapons that could shatter moons. And they walked proudly knowing no creature in the galaxy could break their warriors. Yet on this day, whispers moved through the hall, and fear crept into their voices. The story began with Earth. At the far side of the chamber, a projection glowed in blue light. A human professor, thin and calm, stood beside the display. He was different from the towering alien instructors. He had no scales, no armor, no claws. His voice was steady and clear, but it carried a weight that made even the bravest students lean forward. On the screen, he showed something small. So small that many students blinked in confusion. A creature with 8 legs, tiny hairs on its body, and eyes like black beads. The alien students laughed at first. Some covered their mouths. Some whispered in their native tongues. They thought it was a joke. That tiny thing? That was what humans called dangerous. The professor did not laugh. He only touched a control, and the screen changed. It showed images of warriors, soldiers greater than any the Academy had trained, facing this small creature. The spider, as humans named it, moved fast, and with one bite it brought giants to their knees. Venom entered their blood, and the strongest warriors trembled like children. The students stopped laughing. Their wide red eyes, their scaled faces, their shimmering blue skin turned pale with unease. A silence heavier than war filled the room. One alien student, tall with dark ridges on his head, raised his hand. "Surely this is a trick," he said in a deep voice. "No creature so small can defeat the strong. We are not weak like humans." His words carried pride, but also doubt. The professor only smiled faintly. He tapped again, and the screen showed more. Scientists in protective suits handling the spiders carefully, their tools trembling. He explained that not all spiders carried such power, but Earth's smallest could bring terror even to the strongest hearts. "It is not size that defines fear," the human professor said. "It is the truth that danger hides in unexpected forms." The words echoed through the hall. Many students felt their pride shake. Their people trained for centuries against the great. None thought of the small. Another student, her eyes large and shining, leaned forward. "But why do humans not destroy them?" she asked softly. The professor turned toward her, his gaze calm but sharp. "Because fear teaches respect. Because strength is not always about killing. And because," he paused, letting the silence draw them in, "humans learn from danger. We do not hide from it." The hall stirred. Some students whispered to each other, but the weight of the moment was clear. They had come to learn war, but instead they were learning humility. The human professor stepped closer to the container at the front of the hall. Inside, a real spider crawled slowly, its legs delicate but sure. It was small, almost harmless to the eye, yet the way it moved filled the room with tension. Even the bravest students took a step back. The professor's voice dropped low. "This creature has no armor, no claws, no weapons. Yet it can bring death to the strongest of you. Think about that when you claim to fear nothing." One student clenched his fists, unwilling to accept defeat by something so tiny. His people were known as the greatest warriors of the Alliance, unbeaten in trial or battle. He stepped forward, his voice shaking with anger. "I will face it," he said. The hall gasped. The professor only raised an eyebrow. "You would risk your life for pride?" The student's chest swelled. "I will not bow to a creature that could fit in the palm of my hand." Murmurs filled the hall, excitement mixing with fear. For centuries, these students believed themselves untouchable. Now one would test that belief against Earth's smallest predator. The professor opened his mouth, but he did not forbid it. Instead, he pressed a key, and the container slowly unlocked with a hiss of air. The spider froze, sensing freedom. Its black eyes glimmered under the light. The warrior student bent closer, his pride burning brighter than his caution. Around him, dozens of alien eyes watched in silence, waiting to see if strength or fear would rule this day. Asterisk. The warrior student leaned closer to the glass container, his pride burning stronger than his fear. His tall frame towered over the spider, his ridged forehead glistening under the white lights of the hall. The other students held their breath, and the silence became so deep that the faint steps of the spider on the glass could be heard. Its 8 legs tapped carefully, weaving invisible threads of tension across the room. The human professor did not move to stop him. He stood with his arms behind his back, his face calm, as if he already knew the outcome. "Remember," he said softly, his words sharp as a blade, "danger does not ask for permission. It only waits for pride to open the door." The warrior sneered, his large red eyes glowing with anger. "It is only an insect. I will crush it." His voice was steady, but beneath it trembled something he refused to admit doubt. He opened the container and reached his hand inside. Gasps filled the hall. The spider froze for a moment, sensing the air shift. Its black eyes caught the light, and then it moved. Quick, silent, faster than any expected. The student's hand twitched as the tiny creature darted across his skin. He wanted to laugh, to prove it was harmless. But then he felt it. A sudden sharp bite. The room erupted in cries. The warrior staggered back, his proud chest heaving as his legs began to shake. His hand went pale, then dark veins crawled up his arm like black lightning. He gritted his teeth, refusing to scream, but his body betrayed him. He fell to one knee, his strength draining as though the spider's venom had stolen the fire from his blood. The spider crawled back into the container, its tiny body calm, as if nothing had happened. The professor sealed the container with a swift motion. His voice carried across the hall, louder now. "Strength is not about size. Strength is about knowing what can end you, even if it is small." The warrior collapsed fully, gasping for breath. His proud voice was gone. Medical drones rushed in, their silver arms wrapping around him, trying to stabilize his body. The venom was powerful, spreading fast. The students who once mocked the small creature now stared in horror. Some clutched their chests. Some turned pale. And some could not stop shaking. One young alien girl whispered, "If this small creature can bring down our strongest, what hope do we have against Earth itself?" Her words rippled through the students like a storm. The professor did not answer her directly. Instead, he turned his eyes on them all. His gaze was steady, filled with something heavier than victory truth. "You call yourselves fearless," he said. "But fear is not your enemy. Fear is your teacher. Humans have learned to live with spiders, snakes, and poisons. We respect them, and from that respect, we grow stronger. You, who call yourselves the galaxy's finest warriors, must learn the same lesson. If not, pride will kill you before any enemy does." The warrior groaned on the floor, his face pale, his eyes wide in disbelief. For the first time, he looked not like a champion, but like a student who had discovered how fragile he truly was. The medical drones carried him away, leaving the hall in stunned silence. The spider remained in its container, still and calm, as if mocking the pride of those who watched. The professor spoke again, quieter now but no less sharp. "Earth is full of creatures you cannot imagine. This spider is one of the smallest. If such a small thing can do this, imagine what else waits in the shadows of our world." The students shifted in their seats. Some lowered their heads. Others whispered, their voices trembling. The academy had taught them to fight beasts the size of buildings, but never to respect what could fit on the tip of a finger. For the first time, They felt something they had never admitted before: vulnerability. And yet, mixed with fear, there was something else: curiosity. If humans could live among such creatures, if they could face them daily and survive, then perhaps humanity was not weak at all. Perhaps humanity was stronger than any warrior they had ever known. The professor turned off the holographic screen. The room dimmed, leaving only the small container glowing under the lights. "This," he said, pointing to the spider, "is why Earth should never be underestimated. Not for its size, not for its power, but for the truth that danger does not need to be big to end the proud." No one argued. No one laughed. The lesson had been carved into their minds, deeper than any blade could cut. The lecture hall remained heavy with silence even after the warrior was carried away. The spider sat inside its glass container, small and quiet, yet it felt like its presence filled the entire room. The students who once mocked it now kept their distance, their eyes fixed on it with unease. They had faced blades, beasts, and burning plasma, but never had they seen pride fall so quickly to something so tiny. The human professor let the silence stretch. He walked slowly across the stage, his hands behind his back, his steps calm. His voice broke the silence at last. "Tell me," he said, scanning their faces, "what have you truly learned today?" No one answered at first. Their mouths opened, but no sound came. Finally, a thin alien student with bright orange hair and large eyes raised her trembling hand. That strength does not always mean size," she whispered. The professor nodded. "Good. What else?" Another student, his blue skin pale, muttered, "That we are not as fearless as we thought." The professor's lips curved faintly, not in amusement, but in understanding. "Yes, fear is not your enemy. Fear keeps you alive." He turned toward the container, his gaze steady. "Humans have lived beside danger since the beginning. We do not erase it. We adapt. That is why a creature so small can remind you of your limits. And that is why humanity has survived when stronger species have fallen." The students shifted in their seats. Their teachers had always told them that size and strength decided victory. But here stood a human, small compared to them, teaching a truth that none of their warriors had dared to admit. One student, tall with sharp ridges along his arms, stood abruptly. "If your world is filled with such creatures, how do humans even live there? How are you not wiped out by these spiders and snakes you speak of?" The professor turned to him, his eyes calm but sharp as steel. "Because we respect what can kill us. We learn, we adapt. We do not pretend to be untouchable. That is the difference." The tall student frowned, his pride fighting against the truth, but he had no answer. He sat back down, his head low. Another student, younger and more curious than the rest, leaned forward, her voice soft but full of wonder. "Does that mean humans are not the strongest, but they are the most careful?" The professor paused. "Not careful," he said firmly. "Resilient. We take wounds and keep standing. We face fear and keep walking. That is what makes us strong. The spider is not our enemy, it is our teacher." His words rolled through the hall like thunder. The students stared at the spider again, but now they saw more than just fear. They saw a reflection of themselves, proud, careless, and blind to the dangers they never bothered to respect. The professor tapped a control, and the hologram above him shifted. Images filled the air, ancient humans facing wild beasts, fragile against the claws of predators, but never giving up. Hunters building tools, fires, weapons. Villages fighting storms, floods, and plagues. Generations growing stronger because the world forced them to. "Every danger that should have killed us," the professor said, his voice steady, "instead made us stronger. The spider, the snake, the storm, they are all reminders. We do not fear nothing. We fear everything. And because we fear, we endure." The students sat frozen. For the first time, They looked at humanity not as weaklings who needed protection, but as survivors forged by a world that never showed mercy. A shiver went through the class as the professor ended the hologram. You believe your strength comes from having no fear. You are wrong. True strength comes from knowing fear and refusing to fall. The words hung in the air, heavier than any weapon. The students lowered their eyes, their pride shattered but their curiosity burning stronger than before. One brave student finally whispered what they all felt. If spiders are only one lesson, how many more does Earth hold? The professor gave no answer. He simply looked at them, his silence more powerful than any reply, and in that silence, the students began to realize that the galaxy had much to fear, not from Earth's size, not from its armies, but from its people. Word of the spider spread faster than fire through the academy. By the next day, it was no longer just the students whispering. Teachers, warriors, and even council leaders spoke of the small Earth creature that had brought down their strongest trainee with a single bite. Pride turned into doubt, and doubt soon turned into anger. The Galactic Council hated weakness, and they hated mysteries even more. To them, Earth was a backwater world, a place with no great fleets or legendary armies. Yet now, stories claimed its smallest life could bring their greatest low. That truth was dangerous. If a rumor could shake the hearts of students, what would it do to the Empire's armies? So they gathered. A special session was called in the central dome of the Academy, where banners of 100 worlds hung. The students were forced to sit in silence, while council members in heavy armor took their places above. At the center stood the human professor, alone, calm, with only the small glass container beside him. Inside, the spider crawled slowly, as if it understood the weight of the day. One council leader, with scales black as iron and golden eyes like suns, pointed a claw at him. "Human," she said coldly, "your lesson has broken discipline. You made our students afraid of an insect. Tell us, is this fear a weapon of Earth?" The professor raised his chin, his expression unshaken. "No, it is not a weapon. It is a truth. The smallest can kill the strongest. Deny it, and you deny survival." The council murmured among themselves. One slammed a fist against the stone table, shaking the chamber. "Then prove it," he growled. "Show us this creature's power against one of our warriors. Let the galaxy see if your words hold weight." The hall trembled with anticipation. Students glanced at each other, some horrified, others eager to see what would happen next. The spider, silent and patient, waited as if it knew the stage belonged to it. The professor's eyes narrowed. "If you wish for proof, you shall have it. But understand this proof has a cost." A warrior was called forward. Not a student this time, but a trained soldier of the council guard. His armor gleamed silver, his muscles carved by years of battle. He stepped proudly into the circle, bowing only slightly to his leaders. He looked down at the tiny glass container and laughed. "This is the test? You bring me here to fight a bug?" The students shifted uneasily, remembering the last warrior who mocked. The soldier, however, was too proud to notice. He pulled off his armored gloves and thrust his hand inside the container. Daring the creature to act, the spider moved with its same unnatural calm. It crawled across his hand, its small legs almost invisible against the giant's skin. Then, quick as lightning, it bit. The soldier froze. For one long breath, he seemed unbothered. He even smirked. But then his smirk broke. His arm jerked. His chest heaved. The veins on his neck darkened as venom raced through his blood. He staggered, his knees hitting the ground with a dull thud. Gasps filled the dome. The medical drones rushed. But the soldier's body shook violently. His strength ripped away in seconds. His hand clawed at the floor, trying to hold on, but his pride crumbled with him. In less than a minute, one of the galaxy's finest warriors lay unconscious, nearly broken by something smaller than a fingertip. The council chamber erupted with shouts. Some cried out in disbelief. Some roared in anger. Others fell silent, the truth too heavy to deny. The human professor spoke above the noise, his voice like iron. This is not a weapon of war. This is a reminder. Power does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And if you are too proud to hear it, you will fall. The spider was sealed once more, resting inside its glass like a king on a throne. None dared laugh now. None dared step forward. The council leaders stared down at the professor, their golden eyes no longer full of mockery, but something colder fear. The council chamber remained tense long after the warrior fell. His body was carried away by drones, and the echo of his collapse still lingered in every ear. The alien students sat frozen, their earlier pride completely gone. No one dared to meet the professor's eyes. Even the council members, draped in their heavy robes and shining armor, sat in uneasy silence. The tiny spider had stolen their certainty, and with it, the illusion of invincibility they had lived by for centuries. At last, the council leader with golden eyes spoke again. Her voice was steady, but the edges of fear could not be hidden. Earth raises such creatures in plain sight. And yet you humans live among them as if nothing? The professor bowed his head slightly. We live, yes, but not because we are stronger. We live because we learn. We respect. We adapt. That is why the smallest does not destroy us, but teaches us. The words carried through the dome like a blade cutting pride. Some council members muttered angrily, their claws tapping against the table. Danger should be destroyed, one of them growled. You speak of respect for poison, but that is weakness. If Earth were wise, it would kill these spiders, not live beside them. The professor's calm eyes moved to him. And if you destroy every danger, what will you learn? If you burn the fire because it hurts, how will you know its warmth? If you silence every storm, how will you learn to build stronger walls? The students leaned forward, caught by the human's words. Their whole lives, they had been taught to crush weakness, to remove threat. Yet here stood a man from a so-called primitive world, telling them survival was not about destroying but enduring. Another council member, her voice sharp as steel, narrowed her glowing eyes. If humans live beside such terror and survive, what does that make your people? Are you saying you are stronger than us? The professor did not boast. His voice stayed even, his gaze steady. I say this, strength is not measured by who fears less. It is measured by who survives more. And humanity has survived everything Earth has thrown at us. That is why you should not underestimate us. The silence that followed was different this time. It was not pride, not anger, but something far heavier. A creeping realization. If humans could endure daily what had just broken their best, then perhaps humans were not weaklings at all. Perhaps they were forged sharper than steel by a world no one else dared live on. One student whispered the thought that many now feared to say aloud. If this is only one spider, what else lives on Earth? The professor did not answer. Instead, he touched the holographic controls, and once again the dome filled with images. Giant serpents sliding through dark jungles. Tiny insects that carried plagues through their bite. Creatures with fangs, claws, and poisons that no armor could block. Yet with every image came another humans farming, building, walking calmly in the same world. Humans facing the storm, the claw, the venom, and still surviving. The students gasped. The council members stared, their expressions caught between disbelief and awe. Earth was no paradise, it was a crucible. A place where danger was constant and survival was earned every day. The professor spoke softly, but every word struck like thunder. This is our world. A place where the smallest can kill, where the air, the water, the ground itself tests us. You ask why humanity survives. The answer is simple. Because we must. Because we cannot afford arrogance. Because fear is not our weakness, it is our strength. The chamber fell silent once more. The golden-eyed leader leaned back, her gaze unsettled. For the first time, she did not look down on the human before her. She looked at him with the quiet respect one reserves for something dangerous. The spider shifted in its glass, its tiny legs moving as if to remind them that size had never mattered. The room, filled with the most powerful species of the galaxy, trembled not because of a weapon, but because of a truth. And the truth was this: Earth, small and forgotten, had shaped humans into something far more dangerous than the galaxy had imagined. Asterisk. The council did not dismiss the class when the lesson ended. Instead, they ordered the chamber sealed, their guards standing tall at every door. The alien students shifted nervously in their seats, whispering among themselves. Something heavier than fear now filled the air debate. The golden-eyed council leader raised her clawed hand, silencing the hall. "This lesson cannot be ignored," she said, her voice echoing through the dome. "If Earth breeds such dangers, then humans themselves must be examined. Are they a threat? Or are they a tool the galaxy can use?" The professor stood alone at the center. He was small compared to the armored giants above him, yet his calm presence carried more weight than their golden crowns and scaled armor. He did not flinch at the word tool. His silence made the insult sting even more. One council member leaned forward, his eyes glowing red with anger. "Humans should be controlled. If they can live beside poisons and monsters, then they are dangerous to let free. Their fear makes them strong, and strength can turn to rebellion." Another shook her head, her jeweled crest glittering under the dome lights. "No, they should not be enemies. They should be allies. If they endure such a world and thrive, then imagine what they could teach us. Imagine if that strength was added to our armies." The chamber broke into argument. Voices clashed, deep growls mixing with sharp hisses. Some called humanity a weapon to be bound, others a teacher to be followed. The students watched in silence, their hearts racing. Never before had a lesson ended in the council itself tearing in two. The professor finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "You argue about whether to fear us or use us. But you forget one truth." He lifted his hand, and the small spider in its glass shifted, its tiny body glowing under the lights. "We do not live because we are feared. We live because we fear. That is the difference between humanity and you. You think fear makes you weak. We know fear makes us strong." The words cut through the noise like lightning. The council fell silent, glaring down at him, but none spoke against the truth. One council member sneered, breaking the stillness. "And yet, human, you stand here without an army, without ships, without weapons. Your spiders do not conquer worlds." The professor's eyes narrowed slightly. "No," he said. "They conquer arrogance. And arrogance has ended more empires than any war." The alien students shivered at the weight of those words. They saw in the professor not just a teacher, but a reflection of Earth itself, quiet, underestimated, but impossible to break. The golden-eyed leader leaned forward, her claws tapping against the stone. "You speak of fear as a strength. Prove it further. If Earth's smallest can humble our strongest, then what of Earth's people? Show us why humanity deserves respect, not chains." The professor met her gaze. His lips curved faintly, though not in mockery. "If you wish for proof, then you must send your warriors to Earth. Let them walk our forests, our deserts, our jungles. Let them see what humanity faces every day. And then decide if you still believe we are weak." The hall erupted again, but this time it was not laughter. It was shock, disbelief, even dread. The idea of stepping foot on Earth, of facing creatures like the spider in the wild, shook even the bravest. The students' faces turned pale, their eyes darting to one another. Impossible. One council member barked. No warrior would lower themselves to such a test. But the golden-eyed leader did not dismiss it. She leaned back slowly, her golden gaze unreadable. Perhaps it is not impossible. Perhaps it is necessary. The professor bowed his head once, as if sealing the challenge. The spider crawled quietly inside its glass, a small shadow that had already rewritten the pride of empires. For the first time, the galaxy began to fear not just the spider, but the world that could raise humans to live beside it. The decision was made. After long arguments and tense silence, the golden-eyed council leader gave the order. A group of warriors would be sent to Earth. They would not go to fight humans. They would go to see with their own eyes the dangers humans lived beside every day. Only then, she said, would the council decide whether humanity was a threat or a teacher. The alien students buzzed with whispers. Some believed the warriors would return with triumph, proving Earth was nothing but a savage backwater. Others believed the warriors would not return at all. The professor said nothing. He only bowed when the order was spoken, as though he had expected it from the beginning. Weeks later, a sleek silver ship descended through Earth's thick blue skies. The warriors inside were the strongest the council could offer. They wore armor polished like mirrors, and their bodies were built for war. Their names carried weight across the stars, each of them undefeated in countless battles. Yet when they stepped onto Earth's soil, their pride wavered. The air itself felt heavy, full of scents, sounds, and unseen dangers. They walked into a dense forest, tall trees rising like towers around them. The ground was soft with layers of leaves, and strange cries echoed through the branches. Birds with sharp beaks and piercing eyes circled overhead, their wings casting shadows across the warriors' armor. Insects buzzed in clouds, tiny but relentless, their stings biting at the warriors' exposed skin. One warrior hissed in frustration, swatting at the small creatures. "Annoyances," he muttered, his pride refusing to bend. But his arm was already swelling where a sting had landed. Another warrior bent low to the ground, examining tracks in the soil. They were fresh. Something large had passed through only hours before. A growl in the distance made them tighten their grips on their weapons. As night fell, the forest changed. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper. Strange eyes glowed from the darkness. The warriors lit their plasma torches, but the light only revealed more movement in the underbrush. Creatures too quick to see, too silent to predict, circled them. The warriors formed a ring, their weapons ready. Then came the sound. A low hiss, followed by a sudden strike. From the trees, a snake as long as 3 men lunged forward, its fangs glistening with venom. The warriors reacted with speed, blades flashing. The beast was killed, its body thrashing against the earth. But even in death, its fangs dripped poison that melted the soil. The warriors stared at it with wide eyes, realizing this was not even the greatest danger of the forest. It was only one among many. Hours later, as they tried to rest, another challenge came. A swarm of spiders, larger than the one in the glass, crawled from the trees, their eyes glinting in the torchlight. The warriors slashed and stomped, but for every one killed, 3 more appeared. The ground seemed alive with crawling legs. The proud soldiers roared in frustration, but fear now crept into their hearts. By dawn, their armor was scratched, their bodies bitten, and their spirits shaken. None of them had fallen, but their pride was bleeding as heavily as their wounds. They had fought armies, they had crushed beasts, but Earth itself was like an endless enemy, attacking in silence, striking without warning, never giving them rest. As they sat in exhaustion, one warrior whispered what none wanted to say aloud. "How do humans live here? How do they survive this? Every day?" The forest gave no answer. Only the wind, carrying with it the cries of unseen creatures, and the rustle of leaves hiding dangers waiting to strike. The warriors who once believed fear made them weak, now clutched their weapons not with arrogance, but with trembling hands. For the first time in their lives, they understood what the professor had told them. On Earth, fear was not a curse. It was the only reason humanity had not been erased. And the truth was simple. If humans could live here and grow stronger, then perhaps nothing in the galaxy could ever truly break them. The silver ship returned weeks later. Scarred and battered though, no war had been fought. When the ramp opened in the Academy's central dome, the warriors stepped out slowly. Their polished armor was scratched, dented, stained with dirt and blood. Their proud shoulders drooped, their eyes darker than before. The students who once admired them now stared in silence, shocked to see champions look so broken. The golden-eyed council leader stood waiting, her gaze sharp. "Well," she demanded, "what did you find on Earth?" The leader of the warriors stepped forward. His voice, once deep and thunderous, carried a heaviness that silenced the hall. "We found a world that never sleeps. A world where the ground, the air, the creatures, even the smallest insect, everything tests you. We fought beasts larger than houses, snakes filled with venom that melts stone, spiders whose bite can kill the strongest of us. And yet," he paused, his red eyes narrowing, "humans walk among these dangers as if they are only part of the air they breathe. They live there. They thrive there. They do not fall." Gasps rippled through the students. The professor watched quietly, his face calm, though his eyes carried the weight of vindication. One council member slammed his claws on the stone. "Are you saying humans are stronger than us?" The warrior shook his head slowly. "Not stronger, different. We fight with pride. They survive with fear. And because of that, they endure what would break us." The words struck harder than any blade. The council chamber, once filled with noise, went silent. The warriors, beaten not by battle, but by Earth itself, were living proof of the human professors. The golden-eyed leader leaned back in her throne, her gaze moving from the warriors to the professor. "So, Earth is no weakling world. It is a crucible. And humanity," she exhaled slowly, her voice sharp as iron, "humanity is a species forged in fire and venom." The professor bowed his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Now you understand," one of the students, unable to hold his tongue, whispered. "If humans are born in such a world, what will they become when they step beyond it?" The question hung in the air like a storm about to break. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. For centuries, they had ruled with fleets and fear, believing nothing could challenge their power. But now, a small, overlooked world had shown them that strength could grow in silence, far from their gaze. The golden-eyed leader finally rose, her voice steady. "We cannot conquer Earth. To do so would be to throw warriors into a pit that devours pride. And we cannot dismiss them, either. Humanity is not to be enslaved or mocked. They are to be respected." Her golden eyes burned as she looked at her council. Perhaps even feared. The students sat frozen, their hearts pounding. For the first time, they realized the galaxy's balance had shifted. Not because of fleets or weapons, but because of something smaller than a fingertip. A spider had humbled their greatest warrior, and through it, humanity had risen in their eyes. The professor closed the container gently. The spider crawled inside, silent as always, yet its shadow seemed larger than any beast. He lifted his gaze, his calm voice filling the chamber one last time. "This is why you must never underestimate Earth. Not for its armies, not for its weapons, but for its truth. On our world, danger hides in every breath, and still we stand. If you face us, remember, we are the children of fear. And that makes us unbreakable." The hall remained silent. No one laughed. No one argued. Even the council bowed their heads slightly, acknowledging the lesson they had once mocked. That day, the galaxy learned a truth it would never forget. They had feared nothing until Earth's spider crushed their strongest warrior. And in that moment, they understood. If the smallest of Earth could break them, Then humanity itself was a storm waiting to be unleashed.